All right, Abby, welcome to your video breakdown. I'm super excited to create this for you, so let's get started. In this video breakdown, we're going to talk about your primary goal in your surfing, which is to cross-step. We'll talk about why cross-stepping is important. Then we'll go into the number one thing that's holding you back from being able to cross-step, and lastly, we'll talk about how to fix it. So we watch these professional longboarders just moving so seamlessly, so effortlessly up and down their surfboard. And we think, wow, we want to surf that way. We want to surf with that much grace and elegance. But not only does cross-stepping look good, it's also a super functional way to surf. And I'm going to explain to you why. So cross-stepping allows us to seamlessly transition between the main areas of our longboard, which each have different functions. So if we break down the longboard here on the right side, we have three main areas of the board. First, we have the tail, which primary function is to turn. And when our center of gravity is over that tail, our board has the maximum turning potential. The next area is the middle, or what I like to call the trim zone. Now, when we stand on this area of the surfboard, this allows for maximum speed generation. When we stand here, we have no unnecessary inputs in the board, and it allows the wave to carry the board and move as fast as the wave possibly allows. And lastly, we have the nose. Now, the nose's primary function is to serve as a brake, but we don't need to talk about the nose too much right now. We can just focus on the middle or trim zone and the tail. And so now I have this clip of Kaniela Stewart, a Hawaiian longboarder. And what I want to demonstrate to you in this clip is just how seamlessly and quickly he's able to transition between these three zones of the surfboard by cross-stepping. So let's take a look here. He takes off on this wave and immediately goes into a turn. I really want to iterate that most great rides on a longboard begin with a turn. They begin with positioning your surfboard so that we can set the correct line to surf the rest of the wave. And that happens by stepping on the back, putting our center of gravity on this back third and doing a turn. So there he turns into the trim zone. Now he's up on the nose. He's braking under that critical section in the wave so he can stay riding there. He comes back to the middle, getting speed and using that speed to then throw a dynamic turn as he steps back onto the tail. And there he's back in the middle, gaining speed, coming up to the nose so he can brake under that critical section, back to the middle with ease, gaining speed, and back to the tail so he can throw that dynamic turn with the speed that he's generated. And so I show you this clip just to demonstrate how quickly and effortlessly he can transition between each part of the surfboard. Now, when we're first starting to longboard, we can absolutely transition to the different areas on our surfboard by shuffling. But cross-stepping is such a lighter way to move across our surfboard. We can maybe describe the shuffling as more clunky, and it's also just so much faster and more efficient. We see how quickly he's able to transition between the three parts of his board here. And so let's take a look at your surfing here. You have a really nice right that you caught here. And let's break it down. So you pop up. Actually, I'm going to play this in half speed. So you pop up, and I love this because you are initiating this wave with a turn. This is amazing. I see that your weight's really on that back foot. You're really pushing the board to get up into this middle part of the wave. And it seems like you really understand that that middle part of the wave is where we can really trim to our fullest potential, really maximize the speed and be able to make these sections. So this is amazing. You're turning up into the middle of the wave, gaining that elevation on the wave face, and then you even bring your back foot up a little bit there to try to engage even more of that trim zone. So this is fabulous. And there you go, trimming across the wave, right on the midline, like riding it really, really nicely. You get a nice ride there, just cruising. But what I want to point out here is what's holding you back from being able to cross step. Let's take a look here. What's holding you back from being able to cross step is your stance. So if we go back to the surfboard here, we could say that your middle foot is pretty close to the middle of the board there. Actually, I'm going to do this in green. Whoop. Put the nose back on. Your middle foot's probably about in the middle of the board there. Your back foot is pretty much on the tail. And we can describe this as a neutral stance. This is not a bad stance to have. It's super functional, and it allows you to, ride that wave to its fullest potential, maximize the length of ride. But what's happening here is that we're effectively trying to surf in the middle of the surfboard and on the tail of the surfboard at the same time. And so we're not quite trimming, and we're not quite able to turn this board to its maximum potential. We're widening our stance so that we can effectively do both by either leaning forward on that front foot to trim or getting on that back foot to turn. And so what we want to do, let me put these back here. So what we want to do is to train ourselves to surf with a stance that's either entirely in that back third when we want to turn, or entirely in that middle part when we want to trim, because that's going to allow us to unlock these parts of the longboard to their maximum potential. When we surf here in the middle of the board, we're going to get maximum speed out of our ride. Or when we surf here in the back of the board, we're going to be able to throw more dynamic turns and really place our surfboard with more precision and accuracy. So let's take a look at a clip from Sophia Culhane here, another Hawaiian longboarder. And I just want to point out what she does at the beginning of her ride here. So here she goes taking off. She pops up. Now her stance is about shoulder width apart. When our stance is shoulder width apart, we can effectively surf either on the tail or either in the trim zone of the board. When our stance gets wide, we start getting into both areas at once and minimizing the potential for each one. So we take a look at her stance here. Pretty narrow, shoulder width. And let's watch closely what she does here. I'm going to even make it slower. Let's just take a look at her feet. And then her back foot comes back to really be on that tail so that she can throw this swooping turn. Whoosh. And now she's right here, ready to surf through the midline of the wave, where she then can step forward and change her stance to be surfing right in the middle of the board there. And this is where she's going to get maximum speed out of her board. She's also able to take those 2 steps and land in the middle of her board because she started the wave in a neutral stance and then shuffled back to be on the tail. So once her stance was really back on that tail, she had the room to take 2 steps and still stay in that trim zone. And we can just watch her finish off the ride here, surfing in the middle of the board, trimming until the time's right to get to the nose. There she goes with her next 2 steps, and she gets a cute little nose ride there. And so this is just one way that we can get back to the tail on our surfboard. We can pop up in that neutral stance, but that subtle little shuffle backward allows us to adjust our stance to be on the tail, to throw that turn, and then to transition into the trimming part of our surfboard for the rest of the ride. And we're going to look at one more clip from Sophia here, just to demonstrate another way that we can utilize the tail on our surfboard from the very beginning of the ride. Because like I said before, most great rides on the longboard are started with a turn. It starts with that initial, really set our line for the rest of the ride. So let's take a look here. I'm going to slow this down again. So she's paddling for this wave hard, gets into the wave, and let's look at where her feet are as she pops up here. Her back foot is way back here. Her front foot lands pretty far back. Now she's doing a bit of a modified pop-up so that she can land her feet already in this back third of the board, which allows her to initiate the turn right from her pop-up, set that line, and then take 2 steps up to the trim zone. So let's watch what she does here. She pops up. As soon as her back foot pops up, she's initiating that turn, already pressing with her toes, does a quick little turn, and bang, right into the steps to surf this board in the middle part and really start to trim. Quick trim, and then she's already up to the nose. And so this is another way that we can initiate the ride on the tail, is just modify our pop-up slightly, where we pop up with our back foot already on the board, we pop up with the intention of having our center of gravity back, and as soon as we get to our feet, we turn that board and then get up to that middle part of the board so that we can start projecting down the line. And so how do we fix this? How do we fix our stance so that we can properly utilize these 2 sections of the board to their fullest potential? Now, this isn't sexy, but I'm a huge proponent of practicing in the whitewater. I think the whitewater is a super low stakes way where we can get a lot of repetitions and train our muscle memory to adjust things in our surfing. And so I'm going to pull up this clip here where I was demonstrating this whitewater drill for a client of mine the other day. And I'm going to take you through the progression of this drill. So we catch waves in the whitewater. I'm going to slow it down again. So we catch waves in the whitewater. And here I pop up in about a neutral stance, but you can notice that my feet are shoulder width apart. So this is really good practice for just getting used to that narrow stance. Popping up in the whitewater, super low stakes. We can just practice our stance. We don't need to be worried about messing up or falling. But notice I'm in that neutral spot on the board, probably feet about here. Stance narrow. And as I continue, I take a little shuffle up just to get into that trim zone. And then this is where the most important part of the drill comes in. Once I'm in the middle, I'm going to take a shuffle back so I can get back on the tail here and really initiate a turn from the very back third of that surfboard. And you can see that I'm really turning this board because my nose is up in the air. This is the goal in this drill, is to take that shuffle back and really get the nose up in the air, and just to see how much turning potential our board really has when we're back there. So I turn. Here's the next important part, is that once we turn, we need to continue the ride. We don't want to turn off the wave. So after we turn, it's super necessary to get back up in to this middle part of the board, because this is going to allow us to continue our ride. And this is just a micro simulation of what's going to happen on an open-faced wave. Now, when you are on that back third of the board and you turn and you start to gain that elevation up the wave face, we have to get back into this middle area of the board so we can start initiating the trim and gaining speed and staying in the wave. If we stay on the back third of the board, just turning, we're going to turn off the wave. So this is a super important progression here, is to turn the board and then get to the middle part of the board so that we can continue the ride. So I'm going to play this one more time. We're in the middle, we step back, turn that board, and then we got to take a shuffle back to the middle to continue the ride, and then I take even another step back. I didn't have enough room to do another turn on this one. But I really believe that this drill is going to help you build the muscle memory to, number one, start to narrow your stance, and number two, start to really utilize these 2 sections of the board to their fullest potential. And like I said before, the neutral stance gets the job done. We can maximize our ride and still gain speed from on the front foot and still turn a bit from the back foot. But if we really want to learn how to cross step, it really comes from learning how to utilize these sections of the board to their fullest potential by putting our stance in them completely. And so I hope you found this helpful, Abby. Now I'm going to work on creating a video for you explaining some board design and helping you choose your next board.